So I recently got a Nintendo Switch and I've been playing on it quite a lot. One specific game I've been playing for a bit is Breath of the Wild. I know I'm 4 years late when saying this, but it's a pretty epic game. It's definitely not the best game ever made, but I've had a lot of fun just messing about in the open world. I can't say I'm very good at it though. During my time playing, there's always been one other Zelda game that's constantly been on my mind. That game being Now this is, and probably always will be, my favourite Zelda game, and it's for one reason. The game is absolutely depressing, dark, and miserable. I genuinely have a weird soft spot for miserable games, which explains why my favourite game of all time is Dark Souls. I always talk about Dark Souls in my videos. I always manage to put it in there somehow. I don't even do it deliberately. From what I've played of Breath of the Wild, it just doesn't quite scratch that miserable itch I have when it comes to games. The sequel to Breath of the Wild got announced back in 2019, and from the reveal trailer alone, it definitely looks like the game is going for a much darker tone. There have also been rumours going around that we may be getting more news about the game soon. So this video is basically just a little wishlist style video of what I want Breath of the Wild 2 to look like. Just bear in mind that this is coming from a biased Majora's Mask fan, so take everything I say with a pinch of salt. Now, despite what I said earlier, Breath of the Wild is quite a sad game. You've been awakened in a kingdom that has been left in complete ruin. All four of the champions and the king died hundreds of years ago, and you feel completely isolated in this huge, vast, open world. They did a great job with the tone of the game being quite bleak, but I wish it was bleaker. Having an open world is great and all, but it means you have absolutely no sense of urgency. You're just released into the wild to do whatever you want, and I've literally spent most of my time just fucking about in it using my shield as a skateboard. It's an incredible mechanic, by the way. Please expand on this in Breath of the Wild 2. Then we have Majora's Mask in comparison, which is also set in a bleak world. The difference being that Majora's Mask has this impending dread lurking above you, haunting you constantly. No matter where you are, it's always there, watching you. There's a constant 3-day time limit before the moon crashes down, completely killing everyone, which puts so much pressure on the player to do as much as they can within those 3 days. Be it dungeons or side quests, you never want to waste time in Majora's Mask. During the final hours of the 3 days, you can see NPCs reacting to their imminent doom, and honestly, it's really heartbreaking. Especially knowing that you can't save these people. You're going to be going back in time, leaving them to die in that timeline. It makes the player want to progress through the game. Whenever I play through the game, I always know I can't do everything within the first 3 days. There will always be multiple timelines where everyone is just left to die. Majora's Mask is willing to go the extra mile with absolutely depressing shit too. An example that everyone gives is the Deku shrub you encounter at the beginning. It looks so lifeless, as if its soul had been completely sucked out of it. Later in the game, you meet a butler Deku in the swamp who races you when you're in the Deku form. Once you complete the race, he mentions getting carried away because you remind him so much of his son. You don't think much of this whilst playing the rest of the game, but during the credits you see him hunched over, crying by the lifeless Deku shrub you saw at the start of the game. I just really hope that Breath of the Wild 2 has some dark, depressing, subtle moments like this. Moments that really hit you hard and stick with you for a long time. I mean, like I said, just from the reveal trailer alone, I can tell they're going for a much darker tone. I just really hope they fully embrace it, like they did with Majora's Mask. both Butterwort and have 4 main dungeons. The only difference is, Breath of the Wild has over 100 mini dungeons called shrines. And these are the things I go out of my way to find in the open world, because one of the main things I love about Zelda games are the dungeons. I'm gonna be honest though, I'm kinda sick of them after doing like 20. They all have similar aesthetics, and there's only so many times the color blue is nice to see, you know? They all also have the exact same goddamn music playing. Like, yeah, it's quite a soothing track, but I'd rather not hear the same fucking thing for all 100 plus shrines. Some of them have motion control gimmicks too, which is an absolute fucking nightmare
to do with a Switch Lite.
The main 4 dungeons in Breath of the Wild have similar aesthetics too. Sure, the puzzles solving seems super in-depth and creative, but I don't know. When I think back on Zelda dungeons, I always think of the 4 from Majora's Mask. Each of these established areas with so much history behind them, each one completely distinct from the other. Like, if I put 2 clips from 2 different dungeons, you can tell they are different dungeons, they have their own themes. You can't really do the same for Breath of the Wild, and it's a shame. I hope in Breath of the Wild 2 they go back to the original dungeon formula, where they are historic locations that have been untouched for years, rather than them feeling like just levels in a video game. Because that's what the shrines and dungeons feel like in Breath of the Wild. It was also always super exciting to see what horrible abomination awaited at the end of these dungeons. Aye, in Breath of the Wild the bosses were always just different forms of Blight Ganon, which is really disappointing. However, Breath of the Wild does have bosses lurking in the open world. They're genuinely really cool, but I feel as if they could have been used at the end of like a mini dungeon. Majora's Mask's dungeon bosses have very distinct designs that fit with the theming of the dungeon you find them in. I will never know how to pronounce their names though. George? Let's just call him George. I mean, everyone calls him George, I think. George. An absolute treat for these dungeons was also seeing what unique item you'd be getting during your time exploring too, which actually leads on to the next part. Usually in a Zelda game, like I said earlier, you acquire a unique item that is made specifically for the dungeon you are currently in. It's quite a slow process getting them all, but honestly a satisfying one. In Breath of the Wild, you get all 5 unique items within the first hour. Whilst I do completely understand why they did this, they want you to play around with these items in the open world, and it adds so much freedom to the player. I do hope in Breath of the Wild 2 they go back to the old formula, where the items are slowly drip fed to the player. Because you can have these inaccessible areas during the start of the game, and then once you get the required item, you can have a "oh, I can use this on the thing that I saw before in the earlier area" moment. I don't know how to describe it, but it's a good feeling, and I hope you know what I mean. Majora's Mask only really had the bow and different arrow types, but it still used this formula in a really satisfying way in the world of Termina. This might be a bit controversial, but I really hope they get rid of the weapon durability. I completely get why it's in the game with the whole thinking on your feet shit, but it genuinely just gets tedious after a bit. How about in Breath of the Wild 2, you just start with the Master Sword and you can upgrade it later down the line with an optional side quest? Just like how it's done in Majora. You literally start with a fucking butter knife in Majora's Mask, but you can upgrade it later in the game to this funky ass looking sword. It looks bloody stupendous, let me tell you. I would love to see this sword in Breath of the Wild 2. It's literally just exclusive to Majora's Mask, and I want to see it used in more Zelda games. Whilst we're talking about bringing in gear from Majora's Mask, how about the Mirror Shield? The Mirror Shield in Majora's Mask is awesome. It completely fits the somber tone of the game. The face on the shield looks like it's in constant pain and just in an infinite state of screaming. It would fit so well in Breath of the Wild 2 with the darker tone. Also remove shield durability. Again, I get why it's in the game, but you can't get rid of the Mirror Shield, come on now. I would also love for transformation masks to make a return in Breath of the Wild 2. Now, I have no idea if that would make much sense in the game, but it would be fucking awesome for traversal around the world. They could even make a new mask for the Rito race, which could replace the Deku mask. Because they just don't fucking exist anymore in the universe. Where are my little tree people, Nintendo? What did you do with them? Also, bring back more gimmicky, useless masks. Like this mask that lets Link boogie down. Oh yeah, look at him go. I'm excited for Majora's Mask 2. I really hope they embrace the dark tone that they're going for and give us an experience as depressing as Majora's Mask. Despite how much I criticize Breath of the Wild in this video, I am genuinely really enjoying it. Like, it's definitely one of the better open world games I've played. It's a lot of fun. But listen, Miyamoto, I know you watch my content, I know you're a huge Proxidus fan, so listen to me. Put Ben Drowned in Breath of the Wild 2. Please, I'm begging you, we need a sequel. Wait, is Miyamoto even directing Zelda anymore? Like, son of a bitch.